9-month-old rookie canine at a busy U.S. airport alerts on an elderly man's medical back brace. What seems like a mistake turns into the start of a jaw-dropping investigation. Hidden heroin, staged identities, a silent handler in the crowd, and a dog who refused to stay quiet. What Rex uncovers will unravel a trafficking ring that's been running for months right under everyone's nose. If stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's always more beneath the surface. The terminal at Chicago O'Hare buzzed with the usual hum of travel. Suitcases rolled over the linoleum floors. Boarding calls echoed overhead. And families moved in tired clusters, clinging to passports and stuffed animals. Among them, Rex's paws patted quietly. He wasn't wearing the standard canine vest yet. At just 9 months old, he was too young, still in Phase 2 of the TSA's canine training program. But even without the patch, he walked with a quiet focus beside Officer Jenna Morgan, his handler in Taining, who adjusted the lead every few steps out of sheer nervous habit. Rex was a German Shepherd, black and tan, lean from training and already unusually alert for his age. His ears pricked up at every zip of a bag, every cough, every nervous shuffle. He had the sort of stillness that didn't come from discipline yet, but instinct. Jenna led Rex through the security checkpoint as a formality. He was only supposed to observe today, get used to the noises, the energy, the people. Not respond, just observe. That was what the guidelines said. That was what her supervisor, Mark Geller, had drilled into her for weeks. "He's not ready yet," he had said, voice sharp and final. "If he reacts, ignore it. He's still learning. No real deployment." So when Rex suddenly stopped, tail stiff and body coiled like a spring, Jenna hesitated. They had just passed an elderly man in a wheelchair, being pushed by an airport staffer in a navy vest. He wore a thick medical back brace, a standard enough sight, but Rex's nose dipped low, nostrils flaring, and then he let out a deep, guttural woof. Not a bark, just a sound Jenna hadn't heard from him before. Alert but confused. Still, she kept walking. "Leave it," she murmured as trained. Rex paused, then followed. But 10 steps later, he turned his head, glanced back over his shoulder, and tugged slightly against the leash. Jenna's gut twisted. She had spent the last 3 months building a bond with Rex, and she knew his cues. This wasn't curiosity. This was instinct. "Still, he's not ready," she reminded herself aloud. They kept walking past the ID scanner, past the queue of people grumbling about delays and line lengths. But Jenna couldn't stop looking back at that old man. His hands had trembled when he handed over his boarding pass. She hadn't noticed at first, but now, the image stuck in her mind like a thorn. He hadn't been shivering, he'd been sweating despite the cool air conditioning. His forehead glistened. At the training wing near Gate 27, she met up with Mark. He was already frowning, watching her approach. "You didn't stop at checkpoint 3, he said without looking up from his tablet. "Why?" Jenna bit her lip. Rex reacted. Near an older male, maybe mid-70s. Wheelchair. Wearing a brace, Rex got stuck on the scent, but I kept moving, like protocol says. "He's too green," he said. "Whatever it was probably just a lunch wrapper or a perfume bottle. Don't project onto him." Jeanette nodded. But Rex shifted his weight again. His ears were still tracking the air. She noticed. Mark didn't. Later, as she unhooked his collar to crate him for debrief, Rex turned back toward the terminal with unusual tension. His body remained stiff. He whined. Just once, and Jenna this time said nothing. The day hadn't grown warmer. In fact, the chilled ventilation inside Terminal B seemed more aggressive than usual, carrying that sterile, recycled bite common to airports. Jenna stood still near the training corridor, her grip tight around Rex's leash, trying to shake off the sense of wrongness lingering since earlier. Mark had already dismissed the incident, brushing it aside like a wrinkle in an otherwise smooth shift. But something inside her kept pulling her attention back toward that checkpoint. She had seen Rex react to distractions before. Noises, food, even perfume. But not like that. That deep woof wasn't confusion or excitement. It was focused, primal. Jenna had never heard him make it before. She tapped the side of her radio, uncertain, then sighed and gave a small tug. "Come, big guy, let's get your water." But Rex wasn't done. As they neared the edge of the observation gate near checkpoint 3 again, Rex's head shot up, ears locked, nose twitching. Then, suddenly, he lunged. Not wildly, not aggressively, but with conviction. Jenna barely tightened her grip in time as he dragged her forward. A nearby traveler startled, stepping aside with a muttered curse. Rex surged toward a cluster of people just before the metal detectors, nose aimed low and direct. Jenna's heart sank. Rex, no, heel. But he wasn't listening. The leash stretched taut. People turned, annoyed, puzzled. And then she saw him again. The old man. Same wheelchair, same bulky brace wrapped around his lower back. Straps thick and awkward like something medical grade but oddly constructed. Rex lunged with renewed intensity, growling low in his throat, and then, before Jenna could restrain him, he bit. Not hard, not to injure, but directly at the man's lower back, teeth clamping the edge of the brace. The wheelchair rattled. The man gasped. "Jesus Christ, control your dog," he snapped, voice breaking slightly. Rex clawed upward once, then again, pawing fiercely at the brace. Something inside Jenna went cold. That wasn't a child playing. That was a trained scent alert. "Sir, I'm so sorry, he's still in training," she stammered, tugging hard, finally pulling Rex back. "But he didn't mean he's not cleared for detection yet, he's just..." "Then keep him away from passengers." The man's face was blotchy with color. Not quite flushed out. No, Jenna realized that was fear. His brow glistened under the bright airport lights. Behind him, the assistant who'd been pushing the wheelchair leaned in close, whispering something. Jenna couldn't hear. Rex was still resisting, his whole body vibrating with the urgency of the scent. Jenna crouched down, trying to center him, but her hands shook. Around them, TSA agents began to glance over, unsure whether to intervene. She tried to explain again, louder this time. "He's a canine in training, it's a mistake, he's not active duty." But even as she said it, her eyes met the old man. "The hell is going on?" Jenna turned, already expecting reprimand. "He bit the guy's belt. He wouldn't let go. I tried to restrain him, but..." Mark cut her off. "He's not supposed to engage. This is done. Crate him. Now." She opened her mouth to protest but stopped herself. Instead, she stood slowly and tightened the leash. Rex whined low in his throat, head still tilted toward the wheelchair. "Now, Morgan." She led Rex away, though every instinct screamed at her not to. As they walked, Rex kept glancing back. So did she. But not at the man. At the sweat glistening on his temples. At his hands, which shook even as he tried to adjust the brace. At the way he leaned sideways, slightly, subtly protecting the brace with his elbow like it hurt. Or like he feared it might be discovered. Across the concourse, near the secondary security booth, a young TSA officer named Caleb Ortiz watched the whole thing. He hadn't spoken, he hadn't stepped in, but now, leaning against the edge of a pillar with his hands in his vest pockets, he kept his eyes on the elderly man. The older passenger's sweat was more than nervousness. Caleb had seen it before, in customs, in drug busts, in those telltale seconds when a suspect realizes the wall is closing in, and they're not quite fast enough to escape. His radio crackled faintly, but he ignored it. Instead, he turned slightly, eyes narrowing. He tapped twice on the earpiece, muting the frequency, and reached inside his vest to pull out a notepad. Then, with careful precision, he scribbled something down. "Medical brace, 1 a league male, K9 alert, check secondary footage." He didn't call it in. Not yet. The man had passed initial security with a medical exemption. No pat-down, no body scan, protocol. But something in his gut told him Rex had caught more than a scent. And he didn't need a badge to know the difference between fear and physical discomfort. Jenna, meanwhile, sat with Rex in the corner of the K9 station, hands on her knees, trying to breathe evenly. Rex lay down, but his body remained coiled, his eyes flicking to the door every few seconds. Jenna looked at the training notes again, her fingers tracing the line that had haunted her for weeks. "Do not respond to early alerts. Early reactions can be false." She wanted to believe that. She tried, but her gut said otherwise. Somewhere in that concourse, something wasn't right. And Rex, who wasn't even supposed to be working, had smelled it before anyone else. The cold hum of fluorescent lights washed over the security control room. A space tucked behind a heavy gray door labeled Authorized TSA Personnel Only. Inside, 3 monitors blinked in unison, each showing a different camera angle of Terminal B. Caleb Ortiz stood with his arms crossed, his eyes locked on the timeline of the surveillance feed from Checkpoint 3. Rewinding and replaying the clip from earlier in the morning, he had marked the timestamp, 9:42 a.m., the exact minute the elderly man in the wheelchair passed through the checkpoint with the suspicious brace. The footage began normally, a steady stream of passengers removing belts, setting laptops in bins, walking through scanners, some waving at family behind the rope line. But at 9:41 and 58 seconds, the screen flickered, just a stutter in the image. Then, nothing. For the entire 8 seconds as the wheelchair was pushed through the exemption line, the camera feed cut to static. When it resumed, the man was already past the checkpoint, adjusting his brace. Caleb's jaw tightened. He tapped the keyboard and checked the diagnostics. No system error was logged, no maintenance flags, no authorized access from the IT hub. It wasn't a glitch, it was deliberate. The last time Caleb had seen something like that was 2 months ago, when sensitive footage of a celebrity's private terminal arrival had leaked online. That breach was blamed on a contractor with outdated credentials. The fallout was nasty. Investigations, suspensions, new protocols, yet here it was again, a silent, surgically precise interruption. Caleb scribbled a second note. Camera 13B942 blackout, matched to prior breach format. His heart began to beat faster. Either someone had access to the feed from inside, or someone had help. Meanwhile, 2 terminals down, Jenna sat in the handler's lounge with Rex curled at her feet, his head resting on her boot. She was supposed to be writing a training report, but her mind kept drifting back to the old man. Not just the way Rex had reacted, but the texture of the brace itself. Hard, uneven, almost too thick for a spinal support. She had seen dozens before, and none looked like that. And then there was Rex, still tense even an hour later. He wasn't resting. He was waiting. At 10:07 a.m., a low growl buzzed in his chest. Jenna's head snapped up. What? Rex stood, ears forward, nose twitching toward the hallway. He pulled at the leash before she even reached for it. Jenna hesitated. They were off shift now, but instincts overruled policy. She let him lead. They moved past the training wing, past the unused metal detectors, toward the rear hallway that led to the underbelly of the terminal, the maintenance zone and bag handling units. Rex stopped abruptly outside a double-locked gray door. Technical Zuna. Jenna frowned. Rex, this isn't... But before she finished, he was already pawing at the door. One paw, then 2. A low, urgent whine escaped his throat. Then he sat, perfectly still, nose inches from the seam. Alert. Not trained, not cued, pure instinct. Jenna knelt beside him. She recognized the behavior. He had done the same when they practiced scent detection on narcotics hidden in hollowed books. Only this time, the scent was real. She keyed the comm unit clipped to her vest. This is Officer Morgan. I have a canine alert outside Storage 2B, near the logistics corridor. Dog is alerting without cue. I request secondary clearance. Silence for 2 seconds. Then Mark's voice cold and sharp. Morgan, stand down. You're not on duty. Sir, she replied, keeping her tone level. He's alerting on a locked maintenance zone. Something's in... Mark didn't answer right away. Finally, stay put, I'm on my way. As she waited, Rex remained motionless. But his breathing was rapid, nose twitching every few seconds. The scent was there, Jenna could feel it in the air too now. Faint, chemical, sour. Not strong enough for a person to notice, but enough for a dog trained to recognize the compounds used to cut heroin. Her fingers curled into fists. She looked down at Rex, and he looked up at her as if to say, now do you believe me? Across the hall, a security cart came to a halt. Mark climbed out, face tight. Show me, he said. Jenna stepped aside. Rex immediately turned back to the door, claws scraping lightly, and then sat again. Second time today, she murmured. Same behavior. Mark didn't respond. He scanned his badge, typed in his PIN. The door buzzed. Inside, rows of containers, crates, and large clear bags lined the metal racks. A single duffel bag sat at the far end of the room, tagged for international transfer. Mark stepped inside first, eyes scanning. Jenna followed with Rex. The dog went straight to the duffel, no hesitation. His body lowered, nose buried in the fabric seam, tail rigid. Then he sat. It's his, Jenna whispered. It has to be. Mark knelt, reading the bag's manifest. He looked up, eyes narrowing. The old man's flight connects to Colombia. Jenna said nothing. She didn't need to. Mark sighed heavily. We'll bring it in, quietly. I'll call narcotics. You say nothing, understand? Jenna nodded, but her thoughts were already racing ahead. Across the airport, the old man had already disappeared past the terminal gates. But his bag hadn't. Rex had found what the scans couldn't see, and someone with inside access had tried to make sure that discovery would never happen. The morning haze had long since lifted over O'Hare's runways, but inside the terminal, the pressure felt thicker than ever. Jenna stood at the edge of the logistics bay, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the duffel bag now sealed in a clear evidence container. Mark was already on the phone with airport narcotics, his tone flat but urgent. Meanwhile, Rex paced near the edge of the room, occasionally circling back to sit near the container, his instincts unwilling to settle. Jenna's head still pulsed with everything that had unfolded in the past hour. The failed camera feed, Rex's persistent alerts, and now this. The bag, tagged for Bogotá, hidden in plain sight in a restricted technical zone. It was no longer a question of coincidence. Someone had gone to lengths to cover this. Mark ended his call and turned to her. Medical units coming down. I asked them to pull the wheelchair man's medical exemption file. I want to know exactly what's in that brace. Jenna nodded but stayed silent. Her gut already told her the answer. 20 minutes later, a woman in dark green scrubs and airport credentials entered the room, wheeling in a portable scanner unit. Her name tag read Delgado Compliance. She looked between the bag, Jenna, and Mark. You requested orthopedic evaluation? Mark nodded. Passenger wore a lumbar brace, flagged for medical exemption this morning. He wasn't screened. Delgado tapped a tablet and brought up a digital model of the authorized brace types under TSA exemption policy. These are the 5 models currently approved under medical boarding status, she explained, swiping through them. Jenna recognized each. Lightweight, flexible support designs. Standard issue, used for chronic conditions or post-surgical recovery. Delgado continued. According to his documentation, the passenger claimed to wear a Class 2 thoracolumbar support. That would be this model. She turned the screen. The image showed a soft-shell brace approximately 1.2 inches thick, with ventilation grids and plastic compression panels. From what your K9 indicated, she said, glancing toward Rex, you're suspecting concealment. Mark motioned her to follow and led her into the evidence processing lab where, under controlled conditions, they had already laid out the contents of the bag for visual inspection. The narcotics team hadn't opened the brace yet. They were waiting on a warrant, but the XAs had already raised alarms. Delgado studied the monitor carefully. This doesn't make sense, she murmured. This lining here, it's dense foam layered with what looks like fiber-reinforced padding. That's twice the thickness of any medical brace on our approved list. And that bulge at the lumbar? There's no orthopedic reason for that. Could it be modified? Mark asked. Could someone custom alter it for medical reasons? Delgado shook her head. No, that kind of structure would cause more pain than support. It's not medical, it's mechanical. Jenna exchanged a look with Mark. Her voice came quiet, almost automatic. So he lied. Delgado tapped the edge of the screen. More than lied. He manipulated a medical exemption system designed to keep the screening process humane. Outside the lab, a call came in to the lost and found desk near Concourse C. The clerk, Lenny, picked up, sounding bored. Lost and found. O'Hare Airport. What are you missing? A woman's voice, rushed and breathy, came through. Yes, hi. I'm trying to retrieve a medical item my husband left behind. A black orthopedic back brace. We were just here. He flew out this morning. He left it in the security line by mistake. Lenny began typing. All right, ma'am, I'll need the passenger name and gate number. The voice hesitated just a half-second too long. His name is... The brace in question had just been flagged and removed from processing under a narcotics investigation. But the manifest had listed the passenger as Harold Connolly, not Thompson. Still, Lenny played it smooth. Sure, ma'am, give me a moment to check. He muted the line and leaned into the adjoining office. Hey, Marta, you handling that flagged brace from this morning? The one with the K9 alert? Marta, the operations officer, looked up. Yeah, narcotics has it now. Why? Lenny lowered his voice. Some lady just called saying her husband Martin Thompson left it at security, but our log says the brace belonged to a Harold Connolly. Marta blinked. Martin who? Exactly. Lenny unmuted. Ma'am, can I confirm the color of the brace again? Black, the voice answered. It has silver strap. My husband wears it for his spinal condition. He needs it for the connecting flight. He's in Bogota now. Interesting, Lenny said, keeping his tone neutral. And you said your husband's name is Martin Thompson? Yes. Do you happen to know the flight number he boarded? Another pause. No, I think it was Gate 18, Terminal A. Lenny knew for a fact Gate 18 had departures to Seattle all morning. No international departures. One moment. He pressed the record button on the call software without alerting her. Across the hall, he waved Marta over. You hear that? Someone's trying to retrieve evidence, and she's not even using the right name. Marta took the recording and uploaded it to the terminal's internal case file. They now had 2 false identifiers, an altered brace and a woman misrepresenting her connection to the passenger. Meanwhile, Jenna stood outside the medical unit, arms stiff at her side. She stared at the X-ray still glowing on the wall, showing the internal foam pockets, each unnaturally squared and symmetrical. Not cushioning compartments, she could imagine it now, small packets wrapped tightly, stored where scanners couldn't easily detect, hidden behind the assumed dignity of age and frailty. Rex had sensed all of it before anyone. She reached down and placed a hand on his head. He leaned into her palm without a sound. In her earpiece, a voice crackled to life. It was Caleb Ortiz, speaking from the surveillance office. Jenna, you're gonna want to hear this. That woman just tried to claim the brace at Lost and Found. She gave the wrong name and a fake gate number. I've already flagged it with narcotics. Someone's covering for him. Jenna straightened slowly, the pieces falling together faster than she could keep up. First a fake medical exemption, now a planted accomplice. She looked back toward the secured evidence room where the brace sat encased in plastic. Her mind moved ahead. If there was a decoy, then there was a bigger plan. This wasn't a random mule. It was a chain. By midday, the case had expanded beyond anything Jenna or even Mark could have predicted. The narcotics task force had taken temporary custody of the brace for controlled disassembly, and the first results confirmed their worst suspicion. Inside the lumbar padding, woven seamlessly beneath layers of foam, were 8 tight bundles wrapped in industrial-grade plastic. Initial testing revealed high-purity heroin, enough to trigger a federal investigation. Mark walked out of the evidence room pale and tight-lipped, handing Jenna a printed document stamped URGNT in red ink. Here, he muttered, you were right, all of it. Jenna took the paper but didn't look at it yet. Her eyes were already scanning the terminal monitors Caleb had pulled up for her in the surveillance room. Every frame they reviewed pulled the scope wider. At first, the plan seemed centered on the old man and his brace, but now they saw something more. 2 passengers from the same flight path, both requesting medical exemptions. One went through Concourse B, the other Concourse C. 2 names, 2 cities, but one detail tied them together. Both had used hospital documentation from the same outpatient care facility in Cincinnati. Jenna raised an eyebrow. You think the hospital's in on it? Caleb shook his head. No, I think the paperwork's legit, but stolen. He tapped the screen again. Here's the twist. I ran the patient ID number through the DHS database. Harold Connolly, the guy with the brace, did receive treatment at that clinic 3 months ago. Back injury after a fall. So the papers aren't forged. Then how the hell? Look at the address. Caleb zoomed in. Jenna leaned closer. 218 Renly Avenue. Her breath caught. That's a known stash house. DA raided it last spring. Caleb nodded grimly. They cleaned it out, but it changed hands again. The house is now registered under a trust connected to a holding company in Florida. They think it's clean. But it's not. Jenna stepped back, pulse accelerating. So he was a real patient, but his follow-up care was manipulated? Or more likely, Caleb said, he was coerced or paid. They used his real injury to bypass scrutiny. Meanwhile, his address gave them a physical link to stash and prep the goods. Clean records on dirty ground, perfect cover. Just then, over by the escalators connecting Terminal B to the Concourse Lounge, Rex began to pull again. Jenna had stepped out with him for air, but now his body shifted sharply to the left. His nose hovered close to the floor, then lifted suddenly, locked onto something. Jenna let him lead. He curved around the base of a coffee kiosk and stopped near the outer benches. A group of passengers had just disembarked from a domestic flight, dragging carry-ons and coats. One man, mid-40s, in a windbreaker and a black baseball cap, was adjusting his sleeve when Rex let out a single bark. Loud, sharp. Jenna froze. Rex approached, cautious but direct, and began sniffing the man's right arm. The man stopped mid-step, confused. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to sound polite. Jenna showed her badge. "Sir, hold still, my canine is conducting a scent check." Rex moved up the sleeve and sniffed again, then pawed once at the man's jacket. Jenna leaned forward, eyes narrowing. On the dark fabric, faint and powdery just above the cuff, a thin, uneven smear. White-gray, the kind that doesn't cling unless it's oily. She reached into her pocket and pulled a test strip, brushing it gently across the smear. Seconds later, the strip turned light purple. Positive trace for heroin. The man's face drained of color. I don't... What is this? "Sir," Jenna said firmly, "step aside. You're being detained for questioning." "I haven't done anything." "Then you'll be fine," she replied coolly, already flagging a nearby TSA agent for backup. Rex sat beside her, calm again but eyes fixed on the man's sleeve like it held the answer to a much larger question. Inside the interrogation wing, 2 agents prepped the man's belongings for secondary inspection. His boarding pass revealed he had been seated directly behind Harold Connolly, the elderly man with the brace. Caleb and Jenna stood behind the glass, observing. "Same flight," Caleb muttered. "They weren't traveling together." "Not officially," Jenna added, "but this changes things." The agents laid out the windbreaker, turning it inside out. In the right pocket, a single latex glove, empty, but laced with residue. Jenna's voice was steady. "He loaded the brace?" Caleb nodded. "Or touched it during transfer, maybe secured the lining before Connolly got to the gate, or cleaned it after." She stared harder. "What if he was backup? You think he was watching for failure?" "No," she said slowly. "I think he was watching for the dog." As if on cue, Rex whined softly beside her, pressing his nose to the glass. Jenna glanced down and suddenly recalled his earlier reaction, not just to the brace but to the hallway where both passengers had passed. Same corridor, same exit. Maybe the scent hadn't been coming only from the brace. It had been trailing behind. She turned to Caleb. "We're chasing the wrong mule." Caleb blinked. "You mean Connolly's not the courier, he was the distraction," she said. "The package was already transferred. We assumed the concealment ended at the brace, but maybe that was just phase 1. Caleb looked back at the man now being questioned. "You think he was the next carrier?" "No," Jenna said, watching Rex's ears perk again. "I think he handed it off too. And we're already behind." Inside the darkened operations room, the sound of video playback filled the space in a steady rhythm of soft clicks and whirring frames. Jenna leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen while Caleb paused and rewound the footage for the 3rd time. The camera was mounted high above Gate B-22's jet bridge corridor, with a wide-angle lens catching the crowd of passengers exiting Flight 784. There, time-stamped at 9:38 a.m., Harold Connolly wheeled slowly along the right side of the lane, pushed by an airport assistant. Behind him, just 2 paces back, the man in the windbreaker walked at a steady rhythm, duffel over one shoulder, black cap low. Caleb froze the frame. "There. Watch his left arm." Jenna narrowed her eyes. And then it was unmistakable. A small, almost imperceptible moment as Connolly, adjusting his posture, reached backward and let his right hand brush against the sleeve of the man behind him. Not a stumble, not accidental, just a tap. Jenna exhaled through her nose. It wasn't a transfer, it was a cue. "A check-in," Caleb added. He passed him the green light. Jenna shook her head slowly, the pieces rearranging. So maybe the guy in the windbreaker wasn't second tier, he was primary. Connolly's brace was bait. The dog hits that, security focuses there. Meanwhile, the real payload keeps moving. Caleb clicked another folder open, labeled SUP Identity. "James R. Lowell. That's our guy," he said, bringing up the man's DHS file. "Former FedEx subcontractor. Worked regional distribution from 2013 to 2019. Fired under investigation after 4 traceable deliveries high-value electronics. Vanished mid-route. Charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. But he never came back on record. Where's he been since? 2 registered addresses. One in Newark, one in El Paso. Both flagged in a 2020 internal audit as high-risk delivery points. Pattern matches suspected drop nodes used by the Aguilar trafficking ring. DEA never confirmed it. Jenna leaned back, brain racing. So this guy's clean on paper but dirty in motion. And he knows how to blend civilian domestic traveler just enough misdirection. Exactly, Caleb said. And guess where he booked to fly today? Jenna raised her eyebrows. Not Bogota, nope, Panama City, through Houston. Which means, Jenna muttered, he wasn't supposed to be caught here at all. Caleb nodded grimly. And I think he knows he wasn't the final link. He was just phase 2. Jenna pulled out her notebook and flipped back to her notes on the call from the woman at Lost and Found. She tried to claim the brace under a false name. If she was part of the same chain, she might have been the contact for final pickup. Caleb tapped his screen again. You're not far off. Facial match from that phone call's video trace just pinged. She passed through Terminal C at 10:12. Same time our guy in the windbreaker was flagged by Rex. Coordinated, Jenna said under her breath, and with backup plans. Caleb played another feed. This one showed the arrival lounge near Terminal C's mezzanine level. There, the woman, brunette, large sunglasses, phone pressed to her cheek, walked calmly toward the lobby, scanning the exits. A moment later, she turned sharply, as if reacting to a message, then disappeared behind a pillar. She never returned, Paws said. Jenna stared at the screen, the adrenaline in her blood cooling into focus. The depth of the plan was undeniable. Multiple players, overlapping routes, synchronized misdirection. Connolly's brace was the diversion. Lowell was the mover. The woman was retrieval. But what made it more dangerous was the structure. They were operating with delivery-style precision, like a logistics company with an illegal core. Mark entered the room, looking more tired than usual, but holding a thin envelope. Jenna, you'll want this. She opened it. Inside was a printed DEA notice dated 6 weeks prior. Subject, talk of interest low. 3 words. At the bottom was a handwritten note. If seen in transit, do not intercept, track and notify. Jenna blinked. He was being watched already? Mark nodded. He's part of a wider net. DEA's trying to trace not just couriers but handlers. This guy's been under soft surveillance for months. Well, Jenna said, folding the paper slowly, he just became something else. Back near baggage claim, Rex stood near a set of lockers marked temporary storage. He hadn't moved in 5 minutes. Something held his attention. Jenna walked over, knees stiff from sitting. What is it, bud? Rex looked up, then returned to staring at one specific locker. Number 214. The door was shut, secured by an airport-issued digital lock. Jenna radioed in. This is Officer Morgan. I've got a potential canine alert at locker 214, South Concourse. Caleb responded in seconds. Copy. On my way. Within minutes, they had the lock disabled. Inside, neatly folded, was another windbreaker. Same brand, same size. But this one had a cargo vest sewn inside. In one of the pouches, small traces of fine powder clung to the seams. Jenna stared at it, heart slow and heavy. He ditched the original. Caleb exhaled. Planned exit strategy. If the dog hit him, he sheds the evidence and blends back in. And if he wasn't stopped, Jenna asked, then this jacket would have walked out with someone else. Caleb turned the collar over. Stitched into the lining was a tag, red thread against gray fabric with 3 numbers, 778, a code, or an identifier. He was running a route, Jenna murmured, just like delivery. Caleb's voice was quiet, which means there's someone above him, sending the orders. The air in the surveillance room grew thicker as the threads converged. Caleb had just finished scrubbing through the footage from the concourse locker area when another internal flag hit the system. We've got something else, he said, calling Jenna over, this time from the restroom corridor. West Terminal. Jenna moved behind his shoulder as he opened the flagged video file. The feed was shaky, captured from a ceiling-mounted camera outside the unisex restrooms. Timestamped 9:50 a.m., roughly 12 minutes after Rex first hit on Lowell's jacket. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Travelers moved in and out of stalls, kids dragging backpacks, flight attendants fixing their collars. But then two figures entered in sequence. The first, James Lowell, still in his windbreaker, still carrying that duffel. He glanced once toward the camera, eyes shielded by his cap, and pushed the door open. Less than a minute later, a second figure approached, younger, maybe mid-20s, dark jeans, gray hoodie, hood up despite the indoor temperature. He hesitated outside the restroom door, checked his phone, then slipped inside. Caleb scrubbed forward through the footage. At 9:50 a.m., the door opened again. The young man stepped out first, moving quickly, adjusting his hoodie. He now had a slight bulge around his lower back, barely visible under the hoodie hem, a detail easy to miss unless you were looking. 2 minutes later, Lowell exited. Without the duffel, without the jacket, without the brace. At a point, they did the handoff inside. Jenna leaned in. He gave the brace to the kid. And probably some verbal cue for the next step, Caleb added. Look at the way he walks out, completely different energy. Like his job's done. Jenna exhaled. He was a relay, the kid's the actual mule. Caleb was already pulling the airport manifest from outgoing international flights. Let's figure out where Hoodie Boy is headed. It took 5 minutes to isolate the face match. Gate C-34. Passenger listed as Marco Ruiz, 24. Ticketed on Flight 1128 to Bogota. Jenna's throat tightened. Bogota, a direct line into the heart of the narco-African corridor. An endpoint for distribution hubs, known for network pivots. Did he check luggage? She asked. Caleb scanned the file. No, just a carry-on, same as Lowell, less traceable. Jenna stared at the ID photo. Marco's face was young but hardened, a narrow scar above his brow. No criminal record on file, but listed in ICE reports from a 2021 border checkpoint incident. Detained briefly, then released. No charges. This is their courier, she said quietly. Clean, fast, and forgettable. On the screen, the flight status updated. Boarding, Gate C-34. Jenna's pulse jumped. How long until departure? 27 minutes, Caleb replied. Jenna grabbed her radio. This is Officer Morgan. We have a live suspect attempting international narcotics transit. Name, Marco Ruiz. Age, 24. Description, gray hoodie, black jeans, scar on left brow. He's currently at Gate C-34 boarding Flight 1128 to Bogota. I need immediate TSA hold. Silence for a moment, then a firm voice replied, Copy, Officer Morgan, proceeding to Gate C-34. Team on. As the response team mobilized, Jenna turned back to the screen. Replay his exit from the restroom. Caleb complied. The footage zoomed on Marco as he exited, tugging slightly at the waistband area of his hoodie, an unconscious motion but telling. Jenna narrowed her eyes. He was to thing is on him right now, and nobody would check, Caleb added. He looks like a kid. No red flags. Jenna grabbed her vest and motioned for Caleb. We're going down there. By the time they reached Gate C-34, TSA had already cordoned off the boarding tunnel. Passengers stood in quiet confusion, murmuring, staring at the armed officers moving into the jet bridge. Jenna flashed her badge and ducked under the barrier. One TSA agent pointed toward the plane's entry door. He's still inside. They just started seat checks. Inside the cabin, Marco Ruiz sat by the window, earbuds in, eyes down. He looked up slowly as two agents approached. His mouth opened, whether to protest or stall, no one would know, because in that moment, Rex pushed past Jenna, leaping forward and barking sharply, nose pressed directly against Marco's midsection. The kid froze. Rex barked again, pawing once, hands where we can see them, one of the agents snapped. Calmly, not scared, resigned, as if he'd been caught before, they escorted him off the plane and into a side room near Gate C security. Jenna stood behind the glass, watching as he removed the hoodie and shirt. There, wrapped tight across his lower back, was a brace, nearly identical to Connolly's. Same thickness, same internal padding, but this one was newer, smoother, a second generation. Caleb leaned toward her. They made multiples, production line, she muttered. One decoy, one delivery, and probably more. Caleb tapped his pen against the glass. You know what this means? Jenna nodded. We're not chasing couriers anymore. We're chasing a system. The lights in the Incident Response Center flickered slightly as more agents joined the task force review. What had begun as a single anomaly, a young canine in training alerting on a suspicious brace, had snowballed into the uncovering of a fully structured smuggling route that had, until now, slipped quietly under the radar. Caleb had already pulled data logs, narrowing them by flight number and passenger alerts. Jenna leaned over his shoulder as he clicked into the TSA incident database, isolating cases tagged with keywords: medical exemption, orthopedic brace, heroin, and flight Bogota. At first, the list appeared sparse, just 3 entries. But when he overlaid them by date, flight path, and suspect profile, a disturbing pattern emerged. Caleb clicked the first, dated February 18, male, late 60s, wheelchair, medical exemption due to spinal surgery. Brought through expedited line, no search conducted, cleared departure. Later, reports of a controlled delivery in Bogota involving 900 grams of illicit narcotics surfaced. No link was drawn at the time. The suspect was not detained. Jenna scanned the report. Same age range, same exemption method. Caleb nodded. Second case, April 3rd, female mid-50s claimed degenerative disc condition. Orthopedic device flagged in Bogota on arrival but not here. They called her there. Quiet extradition back to the States, but charges dropped. Jenna's eyes narrowed. Because it didn't originate on U.S. soil. Exactly, Caleb replied. And now, case number 3, today's. He tilted the screen toward her. 3 cases in 6 months. All using orthopedic exemptions. All outbound toward South America. All with a physical device used for concealment. Same playbook. Jenna folded her arms, her breath caught halfway. They've been running this loop for half a year, and we've only caught the tail end. Behind them, Mark entered the room with a file folder in hand. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "You two need to see this," he said, setting the folder on the desk. Inside were printed handler logs from K9 Unit Alpha, including Rex training sessions. One report had been highlighted in red ink. Jenna read the entry aloud. May 5th, routine walkthrough Terminal C. Rex alerts on elderly male in wheelchair. Handler note, that was 2 weeks ago. Mark nodded. Same checkpoint, same terminal, different handler. They wrote it off because Rex was still in his trial window. They chalked it up to nerves. Jenna's jaw clenched. It wasn't nerves, he smelled it. Just like today. Mark placed both palms on the desk. This dog picked up a scent pattern before we even realized it was one. Caleb began flipping through more of the previous alert logs. Adding filters for canine reactions, 5 matches came up, each assigned to either Terminal B or C, each involving passengers claiming chronic medical conditions, none detained. You're building a system, Jenna said quietly, and we let it form by not connecting the early dots. Outside the room, Rex sat patiently in the hallway, ears forward, posture still. Jenna stepped out, crouched beside him, and rested a hand on his neck. You tried to tell us, she murmured. We just didn't know how to listen yet. Want to see something else? He asked. Jenna stood. The screen showed facial recognition matches from the February incident, cross-checked against today's background crowd. At the far end of the boarding footage from this morning, a blurry image showed a man seated alone, hoodie down, book in hand. He hadn't moved, hadn't flown, but he had been present for all 3 known incidents. His name didn't appear on any passenger list. Who is he? Jenna asked. Unknown, Caleb replied. He's our constant, always nearby when these brace couriers move. Handler, Jenna guessed. Higher, Caleb replied. He doesn't touch anything, he watches. Jenna took a breath. Then we've been chasing couriers while the coordinator's been sitting in our airport lounge 3 times in 6 months, and nobody noticed. Not until Rex did, Caleb said. Glancing toward the dog, Mark re-entered with an email notification open on his phone. Just got word from DEA Regional. They're sending down a federal rep. They want access to Rex's scent logs. Jenna blinked. His scent logs? Yeah, Mark said. Turns out this kind of consistent pattern recognition, especially with canine behavior over multiple locations, might be enough to form legal precedent. If they tied this series of hits together, we may have the first canine-initiated RICO case in airport smuggling. Jenna turned toward Rex. stunned. "He might have just built the framework." "He did," Caleb added. "We're just catching up." Jenna glanced back at the board, where red string now connected photos of braces, locker codes, hidden compartments, and dates. At the center, 3 faces: Connolly, Lowell, Ruiz, but behind them a 4th. Never claimed baggage, and never got stopped. Caleb tapped the photo lightly. "Next time, he won't be watching, he'll be moving. And we'll be ready." Jenna nodded. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew the next phase was coming fast. And it wouldn't be as subtle. The tempo inside the command center had shifted from pressure to precision. With 8 agents working cross-kennel intel, surveillance running on a 5-minute loop, and the DEA liaison now stationed on site, the investigation no longer moved in reaction. It was striking forward. Jenna, though exhausted, remained sharp. Her desk was stacked with transcriptions, flagged canine logs, and now a new lead: personnel clearance history for the checkpoint through which Harold Conley had passed. She traced the name of the supervisor who had overridden standard body scan protocol. Kenneth J. Doyle, mid-50s TSA operations manager for over 9 years. On the surface, Doyle was unremarkable. A by-the-book manager, 2 warnings in the last decade for schedule misreporting, but no formal disciplinary action. He was known for being strict about policy, sometimes too strict, but now 2 things drew attention. First, his override signature had appeared on all 3 exemption fast tracks connected to the brace corridor. Second, a financial anomaly recently surfaced under his name, buried deep in his annual security review. Caleb slid the report across the table. "DOJ flagged this last quarter," he said. "Unexplained transfer, $23,300. 0 cents deposited over 4 months into a personal account linked to a side LLC. He claimed it was from rental property." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "He doesn't own property." "Not in his name," Caleb confirmed. "The LLC is tied to a shell company in Nevada. DEA's had their eye on it for months, used in laundering operations tied to synthetic trafficking in Texas." Jenna stared at the printout. "So the guy who keeps waving the brace people through is suddenly wealthier than his salary allows. And just cautious enough to keep it quiet," Caleb added. "But this morning he made a mistake. He brought up a security feed 9:35 a.m., checkpoint override station. Doyle could be seen speaking with the staffer pushing Connolly's wheelchair. His body language was stiff, arms crossed, chin tilted low. Then he stepped forward, swiped his badge, and tapped the screen 3 times. The status flipped. Override granted. No scan, no secondary check. Jenna's voice was low. "He did it manually, which means it wasn't an algorithm, it was intent." Caleb paused. "You want to confront him?" "Not yet," she replied. "Let's track his movement after the override." The next 3 hours told a muted story. Doyle had returned to his office, remained on the administrative floor, attended 2 briefings, signed out for lunch, and returned late without logging the gap. "Where'd he go?" Jenna asked. Caleb brought up GPS log records from the employee badge swipe system. "Odd," he said. "No swipe at the cafeteria, no exit recorded. But there's a gap, 37 minutes unaccounted for." "He disappeared," Jenna muttered, "inside a secured building. Or turned off his badge." Jenna stood. "Let's check his office." They moved swiftly through the restricted corridor, Rex padding behind them. Doyle's office was locked, glass-walled, with blinds partially closed. From the outside, everything appeared in order. Papers on the desk, a steaming coffee cup, a half-eaten sandwich on the windowsill. Mark met them at the door, keycard in hand. "He's not in there," he said. "Left 20 minutes ago. Said he had to sign something downstairs." "We'll be quick," Jenna replied. Mark unlocked the door. The moment they entered, Rex froze. His ears shot up. His nose lifted. Jenna noticed it instantly. "What is it?" Rex moved around the desk, tail stiff, then let out a low, rumbling growl. "He smells something." Rex pressed his nose to the corner behind Doyle's chair, then barked once. Jenna knelt down and reached under the desk. Her fingers brushed something cool and hard, thin, rectangular. She pulled it out. A phone. Cracked screen. No case. It wasn't Doyle's work-issued device. This one was personal, unregistered. "He's dead," she said. "Battery's gone." Caleb plugged it into a portable charger, and within seconds, the screen flickered on. No lock screen. Just a single open app, voice memos. At the top of the list, one recording timestamped 7:48 a.m. Jenna glanced at Mark, who nodded. Play it. She hit the button. Static crackled, then a voice. Doyle's, slightly hushed. They'll bring him through by 9:30, same point. Just clear the line, I'll handle the code override. A second voice, male, unidentifiable, with a faint Spanish accent, replied. Good. He knows the cue. Old man will pass it clean. Second will take it in the restroom. You just keep the dog away this time. Doyle, I told you the pup's still in training, he won't be in position. The recording ended. The room went still. Caleb's hands were already typing. We've got voice print now, linking it to prior calls. If he's coordinated more than one drop, this'll confirm the loop. Jenna stood still, adrenaline threading through her chest like wire. They knew his schedule, Caleb said, and they built the window around it, which means Doyle had access to our internal rosters. She looked at Mark. How many other handlers has he worked around? Mark, pale, sat down slowly. Almost all the new ones. We thought he was mentoring. Turns out he was managing blind spots. Jenna looked back at Rex, who sat now beside the desk, eyes still locked on the floor where the phone had been hidden. She reached down and stroked his head once. He knew something didn't smell right again. This time, Caleb said, he found the source. Jenna stood at the edge of the joint operations table, surrounded by faces she barely knew and badges with three-letter acronyms. DCA, DHS, FBI, TSA. Each had sent representatives, and each now eyed the projection map that Caleb had pulled onto the central screen. It showed O'Hare's concourse layout, color-coded paths and digital markers denoting every suspect's movement over the past 4 hours. Rex sat calmly at her side, tail curled around his paws, eyes alert. No longer just a young dog in training, he was now the only constant in a case that had outpaced every manual, policy, and procedural framework they'd known. We're not stopping them yet, Jenna asked, arms crossed, voice low. The federal lead, Agent Norton, DEA, nodded once. Yet, we let this one go through. We traced the pickup in Bogota. That gives us the offshore financial route and shuts down the entire operation, not just the pawns. Jenna frowned. You're telling me to watch it happen again? I'm telling you, Norton said calmly. If we arrest next mule, the ring changes tactics by morning. We lose everything we've built over 6 months. Jenna said nothing. Her eyes drifted down to Rex, who watched the room with the stillness of instinct, not obedience. Norton continued. Ruiz is cooperating undercover. The next drop's set for Gate D19. It's already in motion. The target's a woman in her 30s, pregnant appearance. Traveling alone. Medical exchange happen. Follow the bag, then act over. Jenna's jaw tightened. She knew the logic, but she also knew the risk. Another human shield. Another plane crossing state lines with concealed poison. Another silent win for the people watching from shadows. Still, she nodded. Orders were orders. They moved to position. Jenna took a post near Gate D19. Plainclothes, earpiece live. Rex sat beside her, unrestrained leash. Slack. At 3:12 p.m. the woman appeared. Brown coat, maternity band visible under a loose cardigan. She walked slowly, breathing heavily, exactly as expected. Ruiz walked in parallel from the opposite end. Their eyes met once, briefly, then looked away. In Jenna's ear, Norton's voice came crisp. Stand by, do not engage, let them connect. Jenna shifted her weight. Rex's body stiffened. He leaned slightly forward, ears twitching. The woman paused near a bench. Ruiz adjusted his duffel. And then something imperceptible passed, maybe a glance, maybe a code word. But Rex didn't wait. In one explosive leap, he surged forward, the leash snapping from Jenna's fingers. Before she could call his name, he was already there, barking with a ferocity she hadn't seen in training. He circled the woman once, then lunged toward Ruiz's bag, pawing, growling. TSA officers nearby turned sharply. Travelers froze. Norton's voice broke through the earpiece. God damn it, control your dog. But it was too late. The woman stepped back, startled. Ruiz reached for his bag, then paused. Too late to act casual, too early to run. Rex barked again. Jenna moved fast, baz raised. Freeze, hands visible now. Ruiz dropped the bag and raised his palms. It's nothing, I didn't. On the ground, she commanded. Agents swarmed. The woman tried to move but was intercepted. In minutes, the bag was opened. Inside the lining of a maternity brace, 3 sealed packets, each wrapped in foam and black tape. Field test confirmed heroin. Ruiz, caught mid-action, lowered his head. I was told it wouldn't be checked, he whispered. Norton's team moved in, faces unreadable. What should have been a clean, invisible trail now lay shattered at Gate D19, in front of hundreds of passengers and 7 federal agents. Jenna stood still as chaos rippled outward. Norton approached slowly. That dog just burned 6 months of surveillance. Jenna didn't flinch. No. He just forced your case into daylight. We lost our shot at the offshore link. Norton snapped. You lost control. We gained truth, she said. And you can spin that in court or not, but at least now no one else gets through. Norton didn't reply. He turned and walked. By evening, media had wind of the bust, airport lockdown lifted by dusk. But the ripple kept moving. With the arrest came names. Ruiz gave them willingly. Handler names, pickup routines, transaction methods, even the communication channels. One of them matched the voice on Doyle's phone. Another matched a woman seen with Lowell 2 months prior. The story unraveled fast. 4 arrests in Bogotá, 2 in Panama, 1 in Dallas. The DEA built a timeline not from surveillance but from a dog's refusal to stay silent. 3 days later, Jenna stood on the small lawn outside K9 Division headquarters. A quiet ceremony had been called. No medals, no press. Just a circle of agents, a flag, and a single commander's voice reading a letter from the Department of Justice. For service beyond duty, and for actions leading directly to the dismantling of an international narcotics corridor. We recognize Rex K9 Unit Alpha for outstanding instinct and service prior to formal certification. Applause came soft but full. Rex sat beside Jenna, head tilted, eyes fixed on the crowd. She bent down, clipped the metal gently onto his collar, then whispered, "You didn't wait for a command. You just knew." He didn't bark, just leaned into her side, tail moving once. The youngest trainee in the program had become the first to earn a citation before ever graduating. Because he didn't just follow rules, he followed truth. If the story kept you reading to the end, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. Which twist surprised you the most? And where are you watching from? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every one of them.